Good evening. I'm calling back to order this meeting of the Sacramento City Unified School District Board of Education. Item 4.1, our broadcast statement, which will be read by Student Board Member Halbo.
This meeting of the Sacramento City School Board is being recorded in its entirety and will be cablecast on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel on Comcast, Consolidated Communications, and AT&T Uverse. Today's meeting will air Sunday, November 4th at 9 a.m. and Monday, November 5th at 6 p.m. and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. We welcome members of the audience to address the board. Please complete a speaker form located in the back of the community room and give them to our communications representative, along with any handouts you may have for the board, prior to the conclusion of the item's presentation. Please speak into the microphone when addressing the board and state your name for the record. Please limit comments during public comment to items that are not on the agenda. If you do comment on an item that is on the agenda, we will ask that you please defer your comments until your item comes up on the agenda. Please also turn off your cell phones or place them on silent or vibrate.
Thank you, Student Board Member Halbo. Item 4.2, the Pledge of Allegiance, which tonight will be led by the Vula Steinberg Mathematics Award-winning students. If you can please approach the dais.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I have the opportunity of recognizing these extraordinary young people. David Steinberg endowed the Vula Steinberg Mathematics Scholarship Program at the CSUS Department of Mathematics and Statistics in the memory of his wife, Vula Steinberg. Vula Steinberg was a devoted and brilliant math teacher at Kennedy High School and an alumna of the CSUS Department of Mathematics and Statistics. Vula Steinberg was instrumental in establishing the Mathletes competition in the Sacramento region. Each year, the Department of Mathematics and Statistics presents the Vula Steinberg Memorial Scholarships to our middle and high school mathlete winners. Dr. David Ziegler, chair of the Department of Mathematics and Statistics at California State University, Sacramento, is also here to honor our students tonight and will be providing the Vula Steinberg Memorial Scholarships to our winning students. If I can ask Mr. Turkey to please say a few words.
Good evening, members of the board and Superintendent Aguilar. My name is Matt Turkey, Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, and it's my great honor to be here tonight for the 15th Annual Vula Steinberg Awards. And I would like to thank our winning students, of course, and congratulate them on their achievements. They've learned from their mistakes, as all good math students do, and they've persevered. Those things which we want all students to develop, a mathematical mindset. And I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the teachers, the coaches, and the administrators, and of course, the parents of all of the students. If I can just ask folks just to give our mathletes a hand, please. Thank you. And would the board be able to come to the front?
We would love.
All right, wonderful. Okay, so the first And our next winner is from Leonardo da Vinci, Joseph Toole. Joseph. And our next winner is Angelicia Carranza from Rosa Parks. Angelicia. And our next winner is Xavier Sablan from Sutter Middle School. Xavier. Our next winner is Patrick Lee from Wilsey Wood. And Patrick. So each of the students who have just come up are also going to be receiving in the mail a $100 check from Dr. Ziegler, who is right over here. And before we go on to the high school awards, I'd like to honor both Xavier Sablan and Patrick Lee. Xavier and Patrick, would you mind coming up for a second, please? So Xavier and Patrick were the highest scorers in 7th and 8th grade. Xavier, the highest scorer in 7th grade in the whole district, and Patrick, the highest scorer in 8th grade in the whole district. And now we're going on to our top scorers in the high school category. The Michael Jang from West Campus was in 12th grade last year and is currently in college. And so in his absence, and the highest scorer from John F. Kennedy is Francis Feng. Francis. And the highest scorer from C.K. McClatchy is Parker Van Ostrand. Parker. And our highest scorer from Hiram Johnson is Ron Vilbar. Ron. Okay, so now we go on to our highest scorers in each of the high school grade levels. If I can invite up, please, Zuriel Hoven, the highest scorer in 9th grade. And also, if I can invite up Lucy Lee from West Campus, the highest scorer in 10th grade. Lucy. And if I can invite up again, Francis Feng, our highest scorer in 11th grade from John F. Kennedy. Francis. Congratulations again. And our highest scorer in 12th grade was Michael Jang, who once again is at college, so in absentia. Do you want a photo op with everybody? A photo op with all the students? Come on up. I'll put my head over here. Okay.
Congratulations again, and thank you to all of the families who came out to support these remarkable young mathletes. Item 5.0, announcement of action taken in closed session.
None, Madam President.
Thank you. Item 6.0, agenda adoption. Do we have a motion? Student preferential vote?
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye. The motion carries. Item 7.0, public comment. The public comments will be limited to 2 minutes each on non-agendized items.
Madam President, we have 3 public comments. Please come to the podium as I call your name. David Fisher, Cecile Nunley, and Troy Flint.
Hello, good evening. My name is David Fisher, President of Sacramento City Teachers Association. It was almost exactly 1 year ago today that our leadership met with Superintendent Aguilar, Mayor Steinberg, and we created the framework that led to our contract settlement. We reached the agreement in good faith and with great hope. However, we've been sadly disappointed. The district, for whatever reason, is refusing to honor the agreement regarding our union proposed salary structure that the superintendent personally negotiated. And now, somewhat inexplicably, the district is unwilling to accept the recommendation from the arbitrator to have the issue resolved on an expedited basis. Why create an unnecessary delay that will only exacerbate the situation? Additionally, the district has failed to take advantage of Section 13.1 of our collective bargaining agreement, in which we agreed to work together to achieve significant savings in health insurance costs and redirect those dollars into the classroom. We wrote a letter to the superintendent noting the great news that our work with Checker has already done by producing more than $2 million in savings, while reiterating our continued willingness to engage on this issue to achieve more savings. We remain perplexed by the district's reluctance to act. Why is that? It appears the district's priority is protecting bureaucracy. The number of administrators has grown by 81 since 2014, based on your own numbers. We have received other documents, different numbers recently, but that even shows that they've increased by 51, so it's either 51 or 81. And if that weren't bad enough, we recently learned that one major unexpected cost between when the second interim budget in March 2018 was positively certified and the rejected budget was submitted just 3 months later was a vacation payout estimated by the new CBO to be approximately $6 million. $6 million that went primarily to the highest paid administrators in the district at a cost that could have been completely avoided by simply requiring administrators to take their vacation over time instead of paying them out. However, we reiterate, again, our offer to meet with the district, other unions, and/or SCOE to discuss our proposal, curb bureaucracy in Sac City, and help fix the budget, with the understanding that ending the fiscally irresponsible vacation payouts must be part of any legitimate discussion. Look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Ms. Nunley.
Good evening, Board. It's great to be here and see all of you. I only have a couple of things, well, just one thing actually, and that is on the suspension report that was available at the last board meeting. It's great that you're putting this suspension report in there. I do have 2 requests. Could you make it a little larger font? It was so tiny you could hardly read it. number one. And then number two, the other thing I would ask is that it be broken down by subgroup, because we could not see any information beyond just by school. So if I could do that.
Thank you, Ms. Nunley.
Greetings, Superintendent. Greetings, President Ryan, and the rest of the board. My name is Troy Flynn. I speak to you as a parent and a resident in the Tahoe Park neighborhood. My daughter attends a parent participation preschool there, which is a particular passion of mine, and I'd like to speak to you about that. I know you face a lot of difficult challenges in a very, very stressful financial context, in a context where the state of California has deprioritized education, ranks just 41st nationally in student funding, when costs are growing for benefits, pension, transportation, utilities. You're forced to do more with less. We're trying to prepare kids for an increasingly technological and global world, and we don't have the means. And that forces us into some difficult decisions. And when you're faced with trade-offs and tough choices, you have to go back to your core values. And I think for a school district, those core values are embodied in the local control accountability, the LCAP plan that every board has to approve in concert with the community. And as you well know, for this district, the goals of your LCAP plan talk about getting all kids college and career ready. They talk about keeping all kids safe and promoting social, emotional, and mental health. And they talk about family and community engagement and empowerment. Well, the parent participation preschool program embodies all those values. And as you make those difficult choices, I want you to consider the role that early learning has in making sure we get successful outcomes for all students, closing the achievement gap, and getting them ready to succeed in college, career. And I'm not the only one who thinks so. There are some experts who think so as well. I know you're all familiar with the latest Getting Down Facts study. May I have just a few more minutes? A few more
Sorry,
seconds?
you can wrap up. Thank you.
Yes. And in that study, they noted that kids in California actually make more progress once in school than kids from other states around the country. But what holds us back, and the reason why we're only 46 out of 50 states in achievement, is because our kids enter school further behind than kids in just about any other state in the union. Don't allow that to continue to happen. Invest in kids early on. It's cheaper than trying to intervene later. Parent participation preschool is supporting our kids, providing the foundation for success.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Board President Ryan. We have one more comment from Kara Sinhorst.
Thank you. I have a unique perspective on the parent participation preschool program, as 39 years ago I was making macaroni art in it. But I've also had both my kids in the program, and I just see personally what a valuable program it is. The research is clear on how preschool benefits kids entering kindergarten and throughout their lives. There's been a famous study on kids that followed them till they were age 27. And not only does it benefit them, it benefits communities in terms of how much they save on welfare, crime, education, and more. But we've done a great job in Sac City of making sure that the lowest income kids have access through Head Start. What we haven't done is address the gap of sort of middle income and working class people. I'm an educator in Sac City. Hi. So you probably can guess about how much I make. I can afford our parent participation preschool program. I can't afford private programs. I already looked them up earlier today, and I found all the ones that call themselves affordable are $800 to $1,000 a month. There's just no way that can come out of my family's budget. If we cancel the program due to budgetary cuts here, my son just won't go to preschool next year. He'll hang out at home with grandma, which in some ways I'm sure he'd enjoy. Before you make any kind of budget-based decisions on the program, I would invite you, please, to go see one of the school sites. We're with Ms. Tamara Toby at Tahoe Elementary, and they prepare the kids for school not only by teaching them about literacy and numeracy and manners and taking turns and sharing, but they do it all with real warmth and grace. And I'd hate for you to make a decision on a program like that without actually having to experience it yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the invitation. We have no further public comments at this time. Item 8.0, public hearing. 8.1, public hearing on Resolution 3043, resolution to convey utility easement entitlements to the Sacramento Municipal Utilities District for transportation services.
Good evening, President Ryan, members of the board, Superintendent Aguilar. Before you tonight is the second easement we've been requested from SMUD. This is for the property across the street at the transportation facility to provide electrical services for the new structure there. EDCO does require us to hold a public hearing when we convey easements of district property. You will consider the resolution under consent in a few minutes.
Do we have any public comments on this item? Do we have any questions from board members? Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Allen. Item 9.0, board workshop, strategic plan and other initiatives. Item 9.1, college eligibility letter initiative, presented this evening by Vincent Harris and Christina Espinoza.
For the 2,800 students who are receiving this envelope, learning about their college options, I want to encourage the families to sit down and have a conversation at the dinner table about what it means to pursue your college dreams.
The spirit of our vision around equity, access, and social justice calls for us to always be very proactive and close opportunity gaps. And in this case, we're letting our families know that we are about to send out packets to each of their children, letting our students know what opportunities are available to them after high school.
We're excited because this is the second year in a row where we're notifying more than 2,800 students that they are college eligible. If you look at this congratulatory envelope that each and every one of our seniors is receiving in Sac City Unified, it says, "Congratulations, your widest array of options are inside." I have to tell you, as the first in my family to go to college, I never received an envelope like this. So to get this and to get such fabulous information about the options to go to community college, CSU, and UC can really change the lives of young people trying to figure out what they're going to do after high school.
We've included information about financial aid, we've included information about housing, and just the pieces of information that all of us should be aware of and have a conversation at home about what do we do after our students graduate from high school.
We know that it once was a high school diploma that could lead students into a well-paying job and a meaningful career. Now students really need to have a college if they're going to break out of poverty and be able to reach their career opportunities. And so this packet is really sharing with our students that not only are they eligible for college, but there are a wide array of options available to them. We just want them to have the courage to apply and to take advantage of the financial aid that's on the table to help them reach their college dreams.
Hey parents, we're at the central office, central printing office of Sac City Unified. We just finished preparing and stuffing envelopes that look just like this. Be on the lookout for them in your mailbox and make sure that you're having conversations with your student about the opportunities available to him or to her after graduating from high school. As always, we're available to support you, so give us a call, come visit us for any questions that you might have.
Good evening, Board President Ryan, board members and superintendent. My name is Vincent Harris, and I'm the Chief of Continuous Improvement and Accountability here in Sacramento City Unified. I'm excited tonight to have the opportunity to share with you kind of the framework where the video just highlighted one important part of what we're doing for our students within Sacramento City Unified.
We're really excited to release the IPFS Alpha. Our first implementation is written in Go. It includes a
It appears we're having some technological difficulties, although I was very impressed by your ability to speak simultaneously overhead and in front of us.
Ventriloquism is not dead. That's right. But again, really excited to talk about the framework of which the college eligibility letter is an example of. So let me dive into the presentation. And also be able to be joined by a couple of students who will actually give their own personal testimonies as it relates to receiving the college eligibility letter, which I think will be very compelling. Ultimately, as we think about this work in the context of the nexus of K-12 and higher education, there are certainly things that we all know that are areas of opportunity or continuous improvement. This notion of historically, the relationship between K-12 and higher education has always had some distance. The lack of incentive to collaborate. We realize that we need to be more intentional about how do we create conditions for K-12 and higher education to work together. And then really recognize that there's an opportunity for the partnership and the governance perspective of both boards of K-12 and higher education working together to create seamless transitions on behalf of our students. This pictorial display is just meant to show all the components that really speak to this notion of success for our students and start early. We've already heard tonight from some folks about the importance of early education. So we speak to the notion of kindergarten readiness. Now this plays into the continuum of third grade readiness, middle school, and then obviously as we go through high school and ultimately seeing that successful college and career ready graduate. And so ultimately as a system, we've identified really important high state metrics that help us tease out this notion of what does kindergarten readiness really mean. And so tonight I'll just simply briefly highlight one component of that we're using right now. And what's important about what I'm going to highlight with you is that it's our early identification intervention system, which really is a product of a partnership with UC Merced, where we've been able to leverage the skills and competencies of their technology team, programming team, but also some of their thought leadership in adapting early warning research to actually create a tool, which we actually will share here with the board in 2 weeks on the November 15th board presentation. And here you see actually this notion of early warning research coming to life. And so within the Sacramento City context, we're defining it in terms of an early identification intervention system. And this example from the system itself gives you a framework of what it means for a student to be ready in terms of, or at risk, both ends of the equation in terms of attendance, behavior, or course performance or academic achievement, if you will. And so here you actually see an actual student as it would appear in the system, and you can actually see the framework in terms of how that student's performing quarter to quarter as it relates to key measurable outcomes. And again, this is driven from our partnership with UC Merced based on early warning research that's been around for about 20 years. And so again, you can see actually a highlighted portion of the student report. And then we continue on in terms of thinking about our student in terms of the K-12, P16 continuum, third grade readiness. And so here we actually have an opportunity to think deeply about measuring many things, but in terms of one measurement we'll highlight for this presentation, this notion of looking at the achievement gap for students, but also in this context, really looking at this notion of how do we look at disproportionality? And I know this slide is busy, and the goal tonight is to really just give you an orientation to how we're using real-time data to think about students. So for example, this measurement is of the number of 4th to 6th grade students who met grade level on track criteria. So basically think of these students who are on grade level. The slide or the section below you there, where we're just aggregating student information. And in this context, we're looking at some of our most at-risk students. If you look at the section that says all, it speaks to what the average is. And so this says the average for this measure is about 18%. But we know in the context of looking at the data, we can't just look at the average. We really have to make students visible. And so in the context of looking at students who are at risk and making them visible and really applying the superintendent's strategic frame of an equity, access, and social justice guiding principle, the measurement also looks at really at-risk groups of students. And so you can see it's arranged in terms of looking at foster youth, English learner. The real takeaway is that if you focus in on that middle column, you see students on average are 18% of the measure. But for example, for foster youth, it's only 1.7%, 2%. For English learners, it's 2%. Long-term EL, slightly higher. Our homeless students at 5%. Special education students just under 7%. And so this is a way in which we can see students and see relative performance. And so this is where the disproportionality analysis allows us to really think from a overall, not just equality, but really from an equity perspective, what must we do differently as a system? When we see an average, that only gives us kind of a holistic kind of composite view, but it's really the ability to see by student, by need, as the superintendent speaks to the guiding principle, is really where our work comes to life. And then ultimately, as we think about this continuum, we get to high school readiness and success. And really, you've heard previously in previous presentations about our A through G monitoring tool. And this has really been something that's been an important tool to help support the work that goes on behalf of our students, and particularly our high school students. This is something that directly is informed by the superintendent's background, working in higher education, and allows us to really take the data as it relates to our students' academic performance for CSU and UC, and really look deeply at their opportunities to become fully eligible by completing the 15-unit minimum for A through G. And so this is a tool that starts giving a profile to counselors, which can be used as a conversation with students to help them understand where they are in that continuum. Because there's benchmarks that start at 9th grade in terms of completion for A through G, which is a measurement of college readiness. And then this tool actually allows you to kind of see in real time, how are students doing? How are they performing? And of course, gives an assessment, are they on track, subject borderline, or off track? So that again, we can take actions to support them in cases where they might be subject borderline or off. And then finally, as we think about our students as they graduate, we reach this notion of really, what does it mean to be college and career ready? In this context, as you saw through the video, what does it mean to be college eligible? And so we have lots of resources that we're building to try and help support our students to understand it with information about, so as you look at your academic profile as a student, where am I most eligible to attend college? So we've actually done proactive work to help build on that. This gives you just a frame of how we've looked at kind of the history of Sacramento City students who have enrolled at these various institutions, basically taking their academic profile and saying, what is a Sacramento City Unified student who has graduated and has enrolled at these various CSUs and UCs, basically bucketing them by kind of cut points we've developed internally in order to create these things called grouping. So there's this grouping A, which really gets to the most selective CSUs and University of California's, all the way through grouping C's, which allow us to kind of look with some differentiated view of how are students ready as we think about this notion of a profile, of a combination of GPA performance, SAT performance, really taking those components that are defined as the conditions that colleges use to define success. Again, this has really been a powerful tool through our UC Merced partnership, because it's allowed us to really do some unique number crunching that's really based on the conditions that the CSUs and the University of California's use. And so this led us to an exciting project in terms of launching in a soft launch last year, but really a fully intensive launch this year, our college eligibility letter. And so that was the video that you saw opening this presentation. Actually, each of you, as I think many of you have already opened up your packets that were at your stations there. And so this is basically our way of supporting our students in terms of providing real meaningful content information. And so on both sides, this slide here, you see actually the envelope, which you're holding, but then you also see the data that we share with students. And really what's important to note, and I know it may not be fully easily to see on the screens, but you can see the bolded the institutions, that being the CSUs like CSU Los Angeles, CSU Monterey Bay. Those are the ones where the student's academic profile most matches. And so this is our opportunity to take advantage. And as the superintendent speaks to this notion of changing conditions in the present, as everyone, mostly people in the room probably already know, the application window for our California State Universities and UCs actually closes on November 30th. So this is a real-time, real action-oriented project where we're able to show information to our students to help them take action. And then, through the power of a data sharing agreement, which I'll talk about in a moment, we actually are looking to get data in real time over the next 4 to 6 weeks so that we can be informed of where our students are applying in our local region so we can encourage those who are eligible. And then actually building on the guiding principle, we talk about the widest array of options. We've just recently launched, I think you have a second packet on this, really our 8th grade letter, which really builds on the notion that we know we have great specialty programs within Sacramento City Unified. We really want to make sure students are aware of them. And so being intentional, obviously to some degree, we know about the aftermath of the C.K. McClatchy, his program concerns and incident. We took that as an opportunity to think about, well, how as a system do we get better? And one of the ways we thought we could get better is share greater information with our students about the opportunities, about this widest array of options, so that every 8th grader is aware of where they might have an opportunity to go in terms of a special program. And that's what this prototype is in front of you. And it's just a listing of all of our, I think up to 19 pathways for high school that are available to students, really recognizing that we have the criteria base, we have many others that, depending on a student's interests, provide value and meet a need for them. And then coming back to this project, this is where we're actually going to take an opportunity to hear from a couple of students, Jennifer and Diana, where they're going to give us their perspectives on the experience. I believe Principal Lambert will be accompanying them as well. And so you'll get an opportunity to actually hear from our intended audience with this project about what this experience meant for them. And then I'll continue to wrap up the presentation.
Good evening, Board President Ryan, Superintendent Aguilar, members of the Board of Education, Cabinet. It's my pleasure to introduce to you two incredible young ladies, Jennifer and Diana, who are seniors at C.K. McClatchy High School. They're going to talk to you about being first-generation college students and the impact of having the opportunity to take the SAT test during the school day, receiving that information, and being able to then receive their student profile data, and the conversations that it's been able to help them to have with not only their parents and their family, but also with their peers, and also open doors for conversations with staff members to help them make the best decisions and best choices about college and career that they may not have otherwise made. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you Diana.
Good evening, Board President Ryan and Superintendent Aguilar and board members. I am Jennifer Rodriguez. I am a senior at McClatchy High School, and I am a first-generation Latina. So for me, going to college is something because no one in my family has done that. My mom from Mexico, so coming to this country, and when she had me, she moved us from LA to Sacramento because she knew that if I were to go to school in Los Angeles, it's really easy to fall off the track. It's really easy to just fall through, and just like that, you're done. Luckily, I've had an amazing set of schools that I've gone to. I've gone to Capitol Heights Academy, Alexander Twilight Secondary Academy, Sutter Middle School, and now McClatchy. And in all of them, I've had amazing teachers. I'm currently in the Criminal Justice Academy, and I'm involved in Brown issues. And my goals for the future are I would love to go to CSU Long Beach and then get my doctorate at NYU. I want to major in psychology and minor in women, gender, sexuality studies. And I really would like to work in a battered shelter for a shelter for battered women and for the LGBTQ community.
Good evening, Board President Ryan and Superintendent Aguilar and all board members. My name is Daniel Dreddy, senior at C.K. McClatchy High School. I've been in the Sacramento City School District my whole life. Started at Washington Elementary School, also attended Sutter Middle School, and now I'm at McClatchy. I'm also, Jennifer, first generation. That is a huge thing for me because my mother was only able to go attend the fourth, so that's a huge accomplishment that I've gotten to high school and had the opportunities been given. I really want to be able to go to college. Well, I am going to, but to be able to pursue my dreams, film director, with help grown up.
So I know I can say for Diana and I that we've both had amazing teachers. I've had, one of my teachers is actually here, Officer Graham, and a huge part of, like, he supports me a lot. And I have another teacher who really, really supported me. For something that may seem small to someone else, it was really big for me. And for me, it was getting an A in math class, which seems really small for someone else. But for me, who I've never gotten an A, it was huge because he offered me that tutoring every day after school and during lunch, and I took advantage of it. And I was one of the only students who got an A in his class. Everyone just struggled so much. And that's kind of like the packet that you guys give out. You know, something that's maybe small to you guys is something huge for us. Because I know several students who, they just feel like they can't go, especially being a minority. you're just kind of expected not to do the best. You're expected less. And it's sad to say, but it's true. I know several students in my academy class who have amazing GPAs, better than mine, and they're not going to college, or they're going straight to a community college, which isn't bad, but they have so many opportunities. And I feel like this packet has really given us validation, and it's really opened our eyes to different things that we're able to do, different opportunities that we have. For me personally, I had several colleges centered in my head, and it really validated that notion. And it gave me more schools that I can go to, several private colleges and USCs that I didn't really know before, as well as the SAT. You know, my mom's always been the type of person where she pushes me to take advantage of everything that's in front of me. So having the SAT day, honestly, I'm just gonna say it, like, if you don't take advantage of that, it's our fault, it's the students' fault, because you guys are putting it in front of us. And it's something that I really appreciate, because I feel that I probably would have taken it later, and I would have been less prepared than I am now. As well as the PSAT, all of the organizations you guys have given us, they're very important. And they really do help us get there where we need to be. And I'm the oldest of 8 cousins, so I know they all look up to me, and if I could, I would bring all these things down to them. Because like I said before, it's really easy to fall through the cracks. Even though we live in an amazing community over here where we're so focused on education, it's still hard, it's still really easy to fall through the cracks over here.
Thank you so much.
Well, I just want to say that the packet for me was, I messed up. I didn't do so well my first years because I let family issues get in the way of it. But I was do a lot better, a lot happier. The packet helped made me feel like I have more of it. Gave me more of kind of like a tip saying don't settle, saying because okay is good. Yes, I can go to Sacramento City or wherever do through, and it's possible. For me, the SAT, if I'm being completely so grateful. Cool, I'm the type of person. I don't think I wouldn't have taken it if it weren't, because I didn't believe myself. I was going to settle, but thanks to the resources, I did. Now I'm starting to see all the things.
Thank you so much for both sharing your incredibly inspiring and compelling stories.
So in wrapping up this presentation, I really did want to emphasize the importance of the student voice. And the packet is more than just about college. It includes FAFSA information. It's meant to be this almost a one-stop overview of the college experience to support students in their decision-making. And ultimately, as we think about, again, this connection between K-12 and higher education, as this board participated in our kickoff almost now a year ago of the College Futures event at American Legion, the data sharing agreement with our other regional partners has really been an important step forward for us to get real-time data. And as I mentioned, one of the things that's going to be really compelling is, as we know the window for applications is open right now until November 30th, we actually have the opportunity for our regional partners, Sacramento State, UC Davis, UC Merced, and Los Rios, to actually share with us who's applied right now. And as our students shared, we have an opportunity to take action, that if students have a profile that would suggest that they would be an eligible candidate for our local regional schools, we have an opportunity to touch them now and let them know, hey, the window's still open until November 30th. And that kind of changing conditions in the present is only actionable because of the data sharing and the collaboration with our higher ed partners here in the Sacramento region. And this just gives you an example of data that we are now using to profile each of our students to make sure we are able to watch their progress in terms of applying, in terms of their ability to say, and you can see here, it really takes you through the steps, if you will, from applying to the notion of depending on which segment, because they're customized by the segment. So there's a different, obviously, profile for community college versus CSU versus UC, but you have an opportunity to see how are they completing those processes from applying to meeting major milestones in terms of readiness, in terms of exemptions, admittance, and also the financial aid piece. So we recognize that to support our students completely, it's not just getting them to apply, but it's really getting them through the whole matriculation process, which is that process that students go through from applying until actually enrolling. And that's really based on the research that the superintendent brings from his experience, and actually our higher education partners have shared with us directly. That kind of support is really important to decrease the melt rate. And that melt term is typically that notion of students who are admitted but don't show up. And so that's really something we've identified as an important thing to tackle. And we're looking to measure it because we don't have that data right now, but that's really something important we want to measure. And so as we talk about, we open with this thing of what are some of the things that we know are gaps. And we know one gap is this notion of the accountability between K-12 and our higher education partners. But recently with Assembly Bill 705, we actually see an important leap forward, if you will, in that shared accountability. And so what this bill basically does is offers a multiple measure framework that community colleges are now using to look at students as they are to be appropriately placed for college-bearing course taking. And one of those components of it are their high school grades. And so what we're in a position now to do is actually actualize the vision of this type of legislation where we can actually share information in real time with Los Rios about our students and their grades. And so that's something that's really compelling to see the notion of legislation really matching this opportunity for us to directly support our students, because now high school grades really are a part of this multiple measure system, which makes them really important for students to have. And this just gives you one way that we are able now to support our students by sharing this data in real time as well, in terms of not having to wait for typical kind of slower passage of data, but now through data share agreements, we're able to do this now in support of our students in real time. And you can see actually in the legislation, it calls out math specifically, and you can see here this tool again through our UC Merced partnership has math grades designate and called out specifically. So you have the ability to see it immediately. So in terms of wrapping up really quickly in terms of next steps, part of this really gets to this vision that the superintendent and the board frankly has spoken to about this notion of how do we ensure students graduate the greatest number of post-secondary choices, and this is about the work helping us get there. The college eligibility letter is just one example of how we're doing it. And then bridging that gap, really recognizing that we see policy opportunities to bridge the gap. We want to take advantage of them, and other opportunities as well in terms of making sure that as we talk about this distance between K-12 and higher education, we are doing things intentionally to close it. And then related to that is continuing to seek research-based partnerships that allow us, as you saw back in May, we had the research practice forum, really just continuing to be present in other spaces where we can talk directly about college and career readiness for students, and making sure we're reading legislation and using that to actually inform other tools we might create for our students so that we can stay on trend and current in terms of making sure we're supporting students with things as they're shared with the press, as they're shared with you. We're in an ability to really make our students visible, and all students. These tools are not designated for any specific student group, if you will. They're for all of our students, and so it's about making all of our students visible and all of our students know their options, as you heard from some of a couple of our students this evening. And so with that, I'll just make a brief mention about the College Readiness Grant, because we talk about ways that we support our students. This has been a big financial win for us. You see this in kind of a high-level way, but when you think about things like SAT Day, the college tours have been extensive throughout the state in terms of CSU visits, AP exams support, PSAT, SAT support. Just want to recognize that if we think about the importance of these opportunities, they really are funded through resources, and so this has been a really important resource for our district to create these opportunities that we have for our students. And with that, I'll end the presentation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Harris. Mr. Barrios, do we have any public comments? Or Mr. Lopez, do we have any public comments?
No comments.
Okay, so I'll take board member comments at this time. Board Member Pritchett.
Thank you, President Ryan. I have a few comments and then I have some questions. First off, this is awesome. So thank you for your hard work on this. I'm sure that it means a lot to our families and students that are getting this information and knowing what choices are available to them and what they should be working towards. Some of my comments as I was going through the package, and I don't know, I know the packets, they can't be too large because it's a lot to go through, right? And we don't want to make it too dense where people just aren't looking at it and they're kind of like, no. But I wanted to know, first off, is I didn't see any information about JCs in here. Did I miss something?
So the packets are actually, I should have made more emphasis, are customizable. I might ask you, Board Member Pritchett, can you share what the groupings are on your packet at the beginning there? So just in terms of those groupings that I shared previously.
Group 0.
Oh, okay. So that packet, normally we try to customize the packets to what students should have. And so in that packet, we should have had
I didn't see
some
anything
community
in
college. So
there.
that might have been a miss there. But the packets are meant to, back to the point you raised, have the information that the student needs. And so for community colleges, we did try to make sure they had the community college information. For CSU students, you had the CSU information. So I think, unfortunately, your packet may have had one of our
I did
error
see like
rates.
what classes they should be taking, but I
Right.
didn't see like anything in particular to like that said like information regarding Sac City
Okay.
or
Well, that might be an
Sierra
opportunity.
College or like our
Gotcha.
local JCs that are in
Gotcha.
our area. That's what I meant.
Gotcha, and that's something we can definitely work on as an opportunity. But the goal is to, what you just described, making sure students knew what classes they most placed to, and so we use the language, but we can definitely do more details as appropriate.
I do want to say, Board Member Pritchett, since we participated in getting to stuff packets, I did see that for the general eligibility pool, there was not only information on community colleges and the College Promise, which allows for tuition waiver at our community colleges, but also the associate degree for transfer, which is the 2-year transfer pathway from community college to CSU. So it wasn't in your packet, but definitely was for the broader audience.
That's fantastic. Good. I'm glad that that was happening. And then I know that there was a information in here about FAFSA, but is there more like an informational page of like how to apply and like what information they need for FAFSA? Because I know as a parent who sent their kids off to college, that's very confusing. It's still confusing year after year when we have to go in there and reapply. So maybe just like a more informational page of like what information to collect that they're going to need, especially for like kids that are, if their parent, not all parents are in the picture, or divorced parents, and they have to get tax information from the other parent. Maybe that kind of information would be good.
And your point's well taken, Robert. And just to share in terms of, and she wasn't able to be with us tonight, but Christina Espinosa, our Director of Counseling, Guidance and Counseling, actually does FAFSA work with our counselors as well. So there is another channel for sharing FAFSA information, but you're right, we can definitely do more in the packet too.
That's great. Thank you for that. And then one other, I have a couple questions, but one other thing, thank you so much for this 8th grade packet. This is fantastic. And I love that we're showing our students like what's available at the other schools and like choose your path. Have we thought about doing one at the elementary school for like 6th graders going into middle school? Because I know like in my area in Rosemont, a lot of families will send their kids to Sutter and they'll say, oh, we know that these programs are available at Sutter, and it's because it's word of mouth, but they don't really go into depth to find out that that was happening at Einstein too, but they had no idea that that was happening at Einstein. So maybe something, I know it doesn't have to be like as a in-depth, packet, but maybe just like, a 3-pager that can be sent out to families. That would be fantastic. So my questions are, first off, what percentage, I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, Vincent, but do you know what percentage of our students are eligible for UC and CSU eligible?
And generally, the proxy we use is our A through G completion rate, which generally is about in the 40s. So about 40+% of our students are
Okay, that's kind of
generally
what I was
eligible.
thinking. Yeah, I just couldn't remember off the top of my head.
And that's
Okay.
using the standard measure of A through G completion.
Okay, and then thank you for showing us that beautiful database that is keeping our counselors, and they can go in there and check to see, and meet with our students and let them know where they can go and what they're eligible for. Can you give us a little bit of information on that and like how we were able to build a database like that?
Well, really, that is the power of our partnership with UC Merced. So they've, in the superintendent's prior work in terms of being in outreach. And so ultimately, we had the elements of what high schools should know to support students in the college-going work. And then actually, our partnerships in terms of data sharing actually provide us the means to get the actual information. And so without our current partnerships with our regional partners, it would be difficult for us to get to populate it. So, and some of the information comes from CSAC in terms of FAFSA. So it's really being intentional about figuring out where data sources are and then trying to build data sharing agreements where appropriate. But
How were we collecting it before?
Well, word of mouth. So, ultimately, we could get to it before because students could self-report to us. And so there was, and some of the, to some degree, right, that's still a very valid way to get information. But if we can build the plumbing to it, that ensures we get it faster and it's already validated to some degree. But absolutely, this is information that our students have shared previously, but this ensures our ability to build the plumbing for every student so that no student falls through the cracks in terms of the data sharing.
Well, thank you, and please thank all the staff that were involved in this and their hard work. A big thank you from us because this is invaluable information. So thank you for the presentation on this.
Right, and it speaks to the great work of our counseling team. And you said, right, there's a continuum of this work. Really, the tools just offer an opportunity to build efficiencies on the work that our counselors have been doing for years. And so this is really our ability to say all means all is building the technology for it. So I'm just a talking head to a large degree about the important work that you've just called out, which I agree, it's very important for our students.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Pritchett. Board Member Minnick.
Thank you, and thanks, Member Pritchett, because I was going to ask about the partnership with UC Merced as well, because I feel like I'm very thankful that the superintendent in coming to join us here in Sacramento brought with him all those connections and contacts in UC Merced. And as someone who works in higher ed myself, I'm seeing this benefit to this exciting opportunity of sharing this data and being able to put this kind of information together. I was going to thank the students who spoke, but they were quick to slip out. But they were very eloquent in expressing their excitement about this. I too was a first generation college student. My dad didn't graduate high school. And I started at Sac State at 30. And the reason that is because no one in my family talked about college. And at the high school I went to, if you weren't proactive in contacting your counselors and stuff about, your next steps for college, they weren't going after you, and we weren't having these conversations at home. Had I been sent a packet like this about what my options were, it might have very much changed my trajectory, and I wouldn't have had those 12 years in between where I could have been completing, other education. So I'm really excited about this. I think this is huge. I'm very excited that next year we'll be getting one of these home at my house for my daughter. And it not only is this exciting and motivating for our students, but it alleviates a lot of additional legwork by parents and families that sometimes we just don't always have the time, resources to do, and maybe we don't always see the value in doing some of this research. And so to kind of light a fire under us a little bit by seeing these options, I think is really huge. So I really appreciate all the work. I appreciate the students who spoke, and I'm just excited what this means for our kids as they transition out of high school into the next thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Minnick. Student Board Member Hobo.
Hi. So I got my packet maybe a week ago, maybe 2 weeks. And it all said that Sarah was still a student board member. But I know that I'm not necessarily the typical student, and that I basically had my plan for college by fall of junior year, and by spring I knew which colleges I would be more likely to get into. But that was because that took up a majority of my time, and I had the resources, and I knew that that was my plan. And being at West Campus, everything is very much college focused, in that everyone takes the SATs. Our classes in AP Literature, we had to write an answer to one of the UC questions and turn it in. And, the college tours, like they were saying, Merced came and talked to us about the UC questions. We have mandatory counselor visits. All of these things exist at West Campus, but they don't exist district-wide. So things like this packet and the steps that we're taking to make sure that all students throughout the district truly understand what opportunities they have are clearly very, very valuable. And Jennifer's metaphor was really perfect in that it wasn't new information for me. It wasn't anything that I hadn't heard, but for so many other students, this was very important and something that they just hadn't had the opportunity or the access to before. And the 8th grade packet is very interesting to me, because I know that just living in Sacramento and telling someone I go to West Campus, they don't know what that is. Same with health professions, the MET, SES, a lot of those programs that are very specific to a lot of students who have interest in those areas, they don't know that they exist. So having an 8th grade packet that really shows them what high school opportunities they have is really helpful.
Thank you so much, Student Member Halbo. Board Member Hanson.
Up to push OK. Well, I'll chime in as well, just in, rapt support of this. The work is great. I'm really proud to sit on the board that has prioritized this as part of our funding, and it's something that's obviously really important for our students. And similarly, my family, neither one of my parents went to college. Neither one of them really thought it was that important for me to go to college. And when I said I wanted to, they didn't really encourage me, frankly. And luckily, I had classmates who were all going to college, and I didn't want to be left behind, and they said I should do it too. So I was in a supportive environment. And a lot of parents who haven't gone to college might not see the value. And providing this information and asking to have a conversation at home, I think, is a real game changer. So I appreciate Principal Lambert coming and bringing his students and your work with him and the other folks around the district to support this. It's really outstanding. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Board Member Hanson. First Vice President Wu.
Vincent, I want to thank you. I mean, this is really, really valuable information. And I think I saw some numbers of the cost that it cost the district to put these packets together. Could share that with the public, because I wanted them to hear what value we get for our dollars.
Right. And so, as I mentioned, we're in year 2 of a full launch, and year 1 of really the big streamlined launch in terms of getting the packets to students before the college deadlines. And so it was about just about $22,300 to do that, or about $650 per packet. And this gets to more of Richard's point, the thing we wrestle with is cost, because we do actually try to make sure it gets there on time. So we don't do it at the lowest postal rate, because we know days matter. But it's about $650 per packet and about $22,000 overall.
This is a type of packet that parents who could afford it probably pay hundreds or thousands for their students. So, this is really great value for all our 12th graders and now our middle school, going into middle school as well. Thank you.
Thank you, First Vice President Wu. Mr. Harris, I want to thank you and your entire team for all of the work that you've put into this, and Superintendent Aguilar. When we first brought Superintendent Aguilar to Sacramento City Unified School District, this is exactly the type of work that we had hoped to see actualized through this equity, access, and social justice vision. This is personally a great passion of mine and very close to my heart, as most of my career has been spent in the world of college access and student success. I do want to speak to a few components of the presentation, because I think that they are key, and they speak to this idea of maximizing opportunities for students who quite often, if they don't come from a family of privilege, would not otherwise have access to the information that potentially could be transformational in their lives. So we talked about the early intervention system and the SCUSD that's been developed to help us at every stage of the educational journey assess whether or not a child is on track. And also, I think even more important than that, recognizing that we don't have the ability to touch every student as we would hope personally, to have through our database an ability to say, if a student is off track, how do we ensure that they aren't having to rely upon luck to find themselves into the interventions necessary to put them back on track, but that we're automatically doing that. And we've heard in past presentations that we've had tens of thousands of credits recovered as a result. We have seen, we believe, graduation rates increase, A through G, four-year college eligibility rates increase as a result of the interventions that we've put in place. I really appreciate the fact that these college eligibility packets are not generic packets that we're hoping will somehow speak to students across the district. We are customizing them based on the data, based on what we know their minimum eligibility is, so that they are getting relevant information information that will help inform them and their families in making choices. I also appreciate that you have included in the packets a reference to AB 705. I think you know that that was legislation that I worked on at the Campaign for College Opportunity. And previously, to my great dismay, as to others, 80% of students across the state were entering the community college system. And frankly, we know 2/3 of all of our students who go to college will start at community college. And they were entering being told that they needed remediation, even if they had had fabulous teachers who had given them strong grades and they had academic indicators that they could go into college level coursework. They were being told, based on an arbitrary assessment test through the doors of a community college, that they needed to take a lengthy remediation sequence in either math or English. What AB 705 is meant to do is to flip that dynamic and ensure that the maximum number of students actually have access directly through the gate to college level math and English, which we know is a huge indicator in both retention and their ability to complete. What I think it's very important to point out is that through the MOU that we've signed that was spearheaded and developed through our partnership at UC Merced, in a mere 7 months, we have done in Sac City Unified what it took more than 7 years to do in Fresno, to share the data necessary so that we are using high school GPA and transcript data as the primary means of placement at our 5 community colleges once students who choose to go to community college enter those doors. I believe we will be the model in the state for that work, and this will be life-changing for thousands of students in the Sacramento area. And so I want to thank you for that. I also want to point out that the work that we've done has been done largely under a college readiness block grant. I think you're also aware, a couple of years ago, I had an opportunity through the Campaign for College Opportunity to advocate for college readiness block grants across the state. We saw more than $1 million come to the district as a result of that. This money has been exhausted, but it paid for our SAT for All. It largely paid for some of the work that we've talked about to ensure that we are lifting up a college-going culture. And so we are going to need to advocate for a continuation of this grant. And I know that folks in the legislature are very interested in looking at Sac City as a model for how we've used these money, not only to lift student achievement, but to close opportunity gaps among racial groups, which I think is key. And so finally, I just really want to thank you for the focus on research-based intervention and intersegmental partnership. It is hard work, it is audacious work, but it is absolutely necessary if we want all of our students and not just a fortunate few to have opportunities. And so I could not agree with Board Member Pritchett more in saying that these middle school packets that help empower our families with information about their high school options are key. I would like to see that built down to the elementary school so that we're empowering families with information about their choices for middle school, because what I know time and time again is that more affluent, more resourced, more privileged families know what schools offer which programs and how to navigate the system. It's everyone else that needs a level playing field, and I believe that resource packets like this and the interventions that our partnership and data sharing with UC Merced have allowed us to put in place are leveling the playing field for students across the district. So thank you.
And if I could, I can't say it enough. Our print shop, that team did a phenomenal job. The permutations of this are up to 20 because we did actually try to customize. So I just wanted to do another quick plug and shout out to our print shop, because I know a lot of times we sometimes don't always appreciate the backbone of making things come to life. And they did a great job here because we couldn't have done it without them.
Thank you so much, Mr. Harris. And again, thank you to the entire team for your hard work. Moving on to item 9.2, our bullying prevention and intervention overview, which will be presented this evening by Victoria Flores and Jessica Wharton.
Good evening, Superintendent Aguilar and Board President Ryan and fellow board members. My name is Jessica Wharton, and I am the bullying prevention specialist for the district. I would like to point out that Victoria Flores is behind me off the camera, but she is not only my supervisor, but also a big supporter of this work. Before I get started, I just want to let you know, I didn't call out cyberbullying per se in this, but every time I refer to bullying, please know that it is inclusive of this presentation. Okay, on the second slide, you can see that this highlights the Sac City Unified School District's core value and Sac City Unified's guiding principle, which states all students are given an equal opportunity to graduate with the greatest number of post-secondary choices from the widest array of options. I would like to actually give you a little bit of history of the bullying prevention work in the district. In 2010, more than 100 task members came together, community partners and district staff, to form a bullying prevention task force. And as a result of this task force, in 2011, they came up with a strategic plan called Creating Caring Schools, a board policy which outlined the definition for bullying, and they also created this position, the bullying prevention specialist position. In 2012, the administrative regs were written, and in 2015, they were updated. And I would say that I'm also working again this year to update them again. As you can see in the last slide, I gave kind of the history of the bullying, and in this slide, I'd really like to kind of look at the bigger picture. Although I'm going to be focusing on the yellow section, bullying prevention and intervention, I would really like to point out the intersection of these three. So PBIS is a problem-solving framework. It's a continuum of environmental evidence-based supports based on student needs. Social-emotional learning refers to the process of learning, practicing, and building competencies. And bullying prevention is the school-wide policies, practices, and procedures for preventing bullying and addressing bullying. And as you can see, there's also some moving parts in here, which is inclusive of trauma-informed practices, culturally responsive teaching, student support services, and expanded learning and youth voice, and I would even throw in restorative justice. With all of these moving parts coming together, basically what happens is when they work together, it increases not only the school climate, but also students' development towards grade level readiness. So I'd like to just point out there are many functions in the bullying prevention specialist position, and I will highlight a few of them. The outreach and training is a big part. We implement comprehensive bullying prevention trainings at schools, and I'll kind of go into more detail on the next slide. We also train, I train administrators, Sac City staff, parents, and students in bullying prevention. This position also implements bullying prevention programs at schools, coordinates the reporting process, and provides consultations and mediations. So like an example of a consultation might be when a parent or an administrator calls and they say, okay, Jessica, this case might be like a gray area. It might be an overlap between cyberbullying and sexual harassment. It might need a little bit more guidance in the way of action steps. And a mediation is actually when I go to a school and maybe mediate between a parent and an administrator or discuss, right, if it is, does substantiate, right, bullying or not substantiated. And I think mediation really is about kind of restoring the harm and repairing the relationship. And in that regard, I think it's really about trying to diffuse the situation and come up with something that would be mutually beneficial for both parties. This position also provides or looks at data collection, collaborates with Sac City Unified School District departments and community partners, and chairs the School Climate Collaborative. I want to let you know, when this work first started, a bullying prevention advisory committee was put into place. And what happened is about 4 years ago, the advisory committee decided that a lot of the work really was looking at the broader picture of climate. And so it switched from being a bullying prevention advisory committee to a School Climate Collaborative. And I would tell you there's representatives right now from the attendance office with SEL, LCAP, the constituent services office, community partners, and students. So, as I noted in last slide, one of it is the comprehensive bullying prevention programs. This is kind of looking at what I like to consider the layered approach. So tier 1 is obviously universal approach. That might be a school-wide component focused on training and awareness. Tier 2 is your classroom component focused on reinforcing school-wide rules and building social-emotional skills. That might be a curriculum. And your tier 3 are intervention components for students who are frequent targets or for those engaging in bullying behavior. And that might end up being a mediation, an implementation of a safety plan, an action plan, or a safety transfer. In the next two slides, I just kind of like to point out some of the bullying prevention work and the intervention work. And when I talk about prevention, this is really about awareness and education. And as you can see at the top, it highlights some of the trainings that were provided last year and who was trained. What I would really like to point out is the breaking down of silos. Superintendent Aguilar strongly encouraged last year for many departments to start working together, and the fact that some of it is duplication of services, but also it was about working together, right, to ensure, right, that we had the best interests of students and families. So right now, or as of last year and now, I've been working with the Behavior Hearing Office, Constituent Services Office, the Academic Office and SEL, Special Ed Office, Safe Schools, Youth Development, Information Technology, and of course, Student Support and Health Services. And I just want to say with the Student Support and Health Services, a lot of the Student Support Center coordinators out at the site drive a lot of the work that I'm talking about tonight. I also want to say the reason why I'm pointing out all these different departments is because bullying prevention is everyone's work. It is not one person's, it's not led by one department, it is everyone's work. I also want to point out, and I'll go into more detail, some of the annual events. Stand Up, Speak Out Against Bullying Youth Rally that happens in October. No One Eats Alone Day, which really focuses on exclusion. Many schools participate, and that occurs in February. As you can see, this is some of the intervention data from last year, from 17-18. 607 consultations with school staff and parents or guardians, 165 reports of suspected bullying, and those were ones that were noted. There were a lot of consults that occurred that did not actually turn into a report of suspected bullying. 56 in-person mediations, and I just want to highlight that starting this year, we are going to be entering all reports of suspected bullying into Infinite Campus. So I just kind of want to give you an example of what something like that might look like. Last year, I received a call from a principal on more than one occasion talking about that there were two girls that were going at it, and she felt like one girl might be targeting the other girl. At this point, it was one of those where it was decided, okay, should we write the report of suspected bullying? Need the administrator to do the investigation? She said, Jessica, I'm on the fence. Can you come out and do a mediation? She invited one of the parents, and she invited the parent of the alleged aggressor. So you can imagine walking in the room, right? It was a little contentious walking in. The reality is, after hearing from both parties, I deemed that it was not actually, did not fit the district's definition of bullying. And in fact, what we had was two particular people that had been friends for quite a while and were no longer friends, what I like to deem frenemies. What happened was I asked the parent to step out of the room, and I brought the two girls in, I brought each girl in separately with the principal, and we spoke to them. And what we found out was really this was something that was triggered by a third party. And really what their issue was a non-issue. When we brought the two girls in together, it came to find out, like I said, that this was a non-issue, and both the girls decided to be friends again. I tracked that case throughout the end of that last year, and there were no more issues, and in fact, the girls were friends at the end of the year. It's just an example of what can happen when there's a consultation, a mediation, or a report. This is actually the district's report of suspected bullying. Anybody can fill out this report. Students, parents, staff members, administrators, and then it gets turned in. Also, I want to let you know that when you go to the Constituent Services Office, if you report bullying, this is the form that's handed to you for parents, and again, it triggers an investigation at the school site. And I also want to let you know that this is listed on our district's webpage. As you can see at the top in red, the arrow highlights how you can access the report of suspected bullying. And beneath that, you can see that there are bullying resources and information, and that's a pretty extensive resource list. There's also a link to social emotional learning, and then at the bottom, there's a bullying prevention intervention staff resources. Now, in the past, it's been very difficult. Staff didn't know where to find all of forms, and now it's in one centralized location where it's very easy. I also want to let you know that this is just a small snapshot of the website. The website is actually quite extensive, including a school climate and bullying prevention brochure. Okay, I just kind of want to highlight, although these things occur throughout the year, these are some things that just occurred in October of 2018. Stand Up, Speak Out Against Bullying Youth Rally. This is the 6th year that Sac City has gotten to participate in this rally. It occurred at the California Museum. Students from Ethel Phillips got to participate this year in addition to 3 other school districts. I really need to give a special shout out to Board Member Wu and his lovely wife for always supporting the Stand Up, Speak Out Youth Rally with OCA Sacramento. As you can see, the first 5 bullets, I just want to point out, those bullets are direct service that went to students. And you can see the last 3, the school staff trainings, the administrator trainings, and the suicide prevention trainings are preventative work. And I just want to point out Breaking Down the Walls. Breaking Down the Walls recently went to Hiram Johnson. They are a comprehensive program designed to unify, empower, and engage students to create positive school climate. As a result of Breaking Down the Walls, there were 2 assemblies for over 1,500 students. There were 3 hours of leadership training for 60 juniors and seniors. There were 3 full-day interactive workshops for 175 9th through 12th graders. And obviously, there was a cost attached to that. So next steps. What I would really like to point out, well, all reports of suspected bullying will be entered into Infinite Campus, and I think that's huge growth for us because now everybody will be on the same page with whether a report is either alleged, substantiated, or unsubstantiated, and it will have resolution to see whether there was an action plan, a safety plan, a transfer, or what may have happened as a result. I also want to point out that there has been a very tight cross-collaboration between the Behavior Hearing Office and Constituent Services and myself. There have been a lot of cases that have come in that have overlap between either cyberbullying, bullying, possible sexual harassment, or harassment. So to the point that I have now had a weekly meeting with the director of students or director of Behavior Hearing Office to discuss that crossover. It is not up here, but I also want to point out a partnership with IT. IT had developed, no, not developed, but had researched and came up with a free curriculum that is online called Be Internet Awesome. I printed out a couple things that I can provide to you today. It is a free curriculum. It's easily accessible. I have embedded it in all my trainings to provide to school sites. And there was actually a survey done as well and a letter that was provided to IT from Albert Einstein kids talking about the ease of use and likability of this curriculum. I also want to point out that working with community partners to address bullying prevention with at-risk students. Clearly, it's about working with all students, but this year there's a special focus on really looking at our students and special populations. Students with disabilities, immigrants, foster youth, LGBTQ youth, and English language learners. I had the pleasure this morning of meeting with 2 members of CAC, and I want to let you know my ask was, will you help? And their answer was yes. And I look forward to that continued partnership. And then last, I will continue to sit on the suspension school climate work group to help create district measures around safety and connectedness. One of those measures is the bullying related indicator. And this will track the number and percent of students reporting bullying incidents that have a developed safety plan with no recurrence of bullying. And then to come full circle, this work revolves around school climate. And again, I'm going to say it again, bullying prevention is everybody's work. So through the continued suspension, school climate work group, and other task force and work groups that are going on currently in the district, we will continue to work on creating a safe and welcoming environment for all students.
Thank you, Ms. Wharton. At this time, we will take public comments. Do we have any public comments on this item, Mr. Barrios?
Yes, we have 3 public comments. Kenya Martinez, followed by Benita Ayala and Cecile Nunley.
Is Kenya Martinez here? Okay. Good evening, Benita.
She's assisting me, so she's...
Oh, no problem. Thank you, Kenya. We appreciate it. You were here last night for the African American Achievement Task Force, too. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Benita Ayala. I must say I had an initial agenda to what I was going to speak about, but when Jessica got up, my son grabbed his tablet and kept on pressing the button, yes, yes. So I looked at him, and Kenya was watching me, and I asked him, have you been bullied? He said, yes. Kenya asked him again. He said, have you been bullied? He said, yes. And the fact of the matter is I was aware of that. And we took care of that situation, but it wasn't by a student, it was by an adult. And I know this is not her category, but I think that I stand here on the representative of the simple fact is we have children with disabilities that are bullied, not just with their students, but you have to realize it's staff too. And I don't know where we spoke earlier, and we know that does not lie with her, but I need you guys to consider that that is an option and that happens. Was it a school? It was someone who was his one-on-one aide. And I was aware of that, but it was painful to know that my son was actually aware of that because it was something I wanted to hide from them. So I wanted to bring that awareness to you and to also mention that students with disabilities, I believe part of them don't really know that they're being bullied. So with that being said, is how do we address the fact that those who don't know they're being bullied to educate the other students teachers and the people around them, which I know would be a little bit harder for her, but I'm also willing to do that. The second thing, as far as to give feedback on what would help, that doesn't cost a lot of money. You know, I used to go to, what are they called? Seminars all the time when I was in school. It used to irritate me to no end. You know, it really did. But seminars were very helpful to get things out, where it's constant, and you're always there, and you're having to listen. And to follow up, you know how many robocalls that I get from the school district, where it's absentees or whatever the case may be? That is something that can happen, that you're constantly keeping in the mind of other people to let them know that there's some bullying things, issues going on, keeping the forefront of the mind. And also that we can just get her some more logistic help. And I'm willing to do that too. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Benita. We appreciate your constant support and advocacy. Cecile.
Hello again. And I wasn't going to come up, but then, of course, I noticed some things, so I had to. And I'm sure it's a great program, and I think you should be commended for it and for the hard work. However, there are a couple of questions that I did have. On the slide, it talked about 630 trained individuals, and that was admin, schools, parents, and community members. Knowing that there's over 2,000 teachers alone, let alone some of the other staff, you kind of wonder, well, if you only got 630, why was it so few? Because it seems if it's going to be school-wide, why not more? And so that was one of my questions. And then the other thing that I had a question on, or a concern, I suppose, when they talked about next steps and working with community partners to address bullying prevention with at-risk students, students with disabilities, foster youth, LGBTQ youth, and English language learners. I also want to highlight, or I feel like it needs to be brought up, what are we talking about with African American students, especially in those IB or AP courses where they're kind of feeling uncomfortable and being almost pushed out or not feeling welcome. And I think that needs to be addressed as well. So I just want to bring those to the forefront.
Thank you for sharing those examples. Hi.
Hi. Good evening, Board President Ryan, Superintendent Aguilar, board members. My name is Kenya Martinez, and I'm a representative for the Coalition for Students with Disabilities. I'm also a representative, actually I'm a member now of CAC.
We're so glad that you joined CAC.
Yes. And I'm also a partner with Benita Ayala in the Gifts Foundation. So again, I just want to highlight what Jessica is saying, actually piggyback up with what Cecile was saying. I do have two students. I have a student who is in a GATE program. He's very intelligent, but he did get bullied as a student in a GATE program. And then I have a student who also has a disability, who's visually impaired, and he actually was harmed and in a way that he was a victim of theft, and he was targeted specifically because he was a student with a disability. So, and like Jessica brought up, we did meet with her earlier, and I fully support her and her intentions. I just want to highlight to the board that I feel like the bully prevention program needs to be mandatory at every school and at every site. And there needs to be professional development training specifically when it comes to students with disabilities and English language learners, migrant students, and African American students. Like Jessica pointed out, we fully support her. We're going to stand behind her. I just want to just say to the board, she needs resources. This can't be done for free. She needs resources desperately. She's one person serving the entire school district, 76 schools, over 45,000 students. So I am asking you to please support her by supplying her with the resources that she so desperately needs.
Thank you.
Okay? Thank you.
So please come back, Ms. Wharton. I know we have some questions. I would like you to take a moment to address the questions that came up about, what we do to address adult bullying and the training that our school site staff, including our teachers, undergo.
Great. I will tell you that, unfortunately, and I explained to the members this morning that any adult bullying has to go through the Human Resources Department. so that I deal primarily with all peer-to-peer. As far as the training component, it is written in our administrative regulations that all administrators have a 2-hour training every 2 years. And I have to say, the administrators have been good about honoring that. And I'm tracking that data. Number 2, though, there's a component that says when those administrators are trained that year, they go back and provide a 1-hour staff training. I am also available to provide that. The reality is, and I'm going to say where I think that we fall into sometimes a quandary, is that we have 9 months of school, we have 1-hour staff meeting a month, and what happens is that when you have a lot of different things that are compliance that need to be done, sometimes we don't have enough professional development hours available to train the staff. But the schools have been pretty good and pretty receptive. Like she said, I think it needs to be something that's systemic and across the board.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Board Member Pritchett, followed by Board Member Cochran.
Thank you, President Ryan, and thank you for this presentation. This is something that our students deal with day in and day out. This is real. I get a lot of phone calls in my area about what is a parent to do, this is what's happening. And I'm always giving the advice of, like, have you gone through the chains? Have you gone to the teacher? Have you gone through the principal before it comes to the district office, right? But this is real. And coming from someone that was bullied when I was in school, I still remember what my bullies look like and their names. I've tried to look them up on Facebook just so I can, like, gloat and, like, say, look at me now, you know. I can't find him. But, you know, it's real, and it still affects me as an adult of what happened to me when I was young. And now we have the World Wide Web, what puts a whole new level on bullying with cyberbullying, right? And so, but prior to me becoming a school board member, I was a PTA president, and I partnered with the U.S. Attorney General's office. And they would come every year. I always held it at Einstein Middle School, and I hosted it for the community. And they would come and do a internet safety program for, they would separate the parents and the students, and they would just get down deep with the parents of, like, this what's happening, because let's face it, some parents don't understand the internet, right? They don't understand what, if a kid goes to a certain website and it leaves a footprint, they don't understand how that all works, right? Or, you know, passing around pornography on a phone and what the consequences are for that student that gets that, right? And so I don't know if that's something that you're doing, but I'm more than willing to help you. Right. And me individually, and just, like, getting that back out. I have resources. I work for the DA's Association, so I know people in that realm, and I'm happy to reach someone and get these back out to our schools, because I think it's an important program, right?
And I thank you for that. And I will tell you, I do work very closely with the DA's office on
You
that
do? Okay,
Smart
good.
program. It is one of those things where, again, I mean, I'm gonna express a challenge here. When you have an opt-in, you end up working with the willing.
Yes.
The problem is that all students, though, deserve this resource. And that therein lies sometimes the problem and then the fact, of course, what the capacity is of that resource.
Yeah.
In this position, I think I have quite a few community partners. But again, it's difficult to approach a community partner and say, by the way, we have 45,000 kids in 76 schools. And they'll say, my capacity, Jessica, for this year is 5 to 8. And of course, I'm grateful, you know, but then you pick those bunch of 5 to 8. But really, it needs to be something where we look at what can we systemically do across the board.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
I
it's a
appreciate
challenge for sure. I completely understand. I know in my area, it's always a challenge to get people out to community meetings. But one thing that I learned is I would partner with all of the parent groups, and then we would put our funds together, and we would say, come and have dinner with us. Because food would bring more people out, believe it or not, right? Or come have a dessert and coffee with us. And we would do it at different times of day, because some parents work at night, some people work during the day, right? So we would always try to, but just let me know, maybe you and I can have an off, you know, after this meeting or tomorrow or some point, and see how we can get this back out to our school sites, and I can help schedule them, and I can help host them too. Like, I'm willing to help you, and it's very important. I went to the website while you were talking, and it was easy to find the bullying report form.
Yes.
One thing I did notice, though, is it didn't have a button that said, like, submit here. It was like a print this page, and not a lot of families have access to a printer. or a way to get to a printer without having to take public transportation.
Moving forward, we are working on putting a submit button so that you can electronically fill it out and be able to submit it.
Okay, because it seems like now everyone has phones, right? And they're able to get to the internet, but they might not have the printer to do that. Or maybe even just putting like, you know, if you can call this phone number kind of thing. And then the other thing I noticed is at the bottom of the form, it said page 2 to be completed by the administrator. But it didn't say like, it doesn't have a page 2 to it. So it was kind of confusing to me, like it says page 2, but where's page 2?
Got it. And you know what? And thank you for that feedback, because the page 1 is always filled out by the student, the parent, the guardian. Page 2, so some people will pick up the packet and there's a page 1 and page 2. Page 2 is the investigative page that only gets filled out by the administrator.
Got it.
I can see where there's confusion there, and we can actually remove that.
That would be fantastic. Thank you so much for this presentation. Like I said, it's very, very important, and a lot of our schools, or a lot of our students are victims of bullying, and it keeps you busy, I'm sure of that, but it's good.
Thank you. Board Member Cochran.
Thank you so much. And Ms. Wharton, thank you so much for this important work. The repercussions of bullying go far into the school climate, absences, emotional health, things that affect a whole wide school climate. So I was wondering if you could pull up slide 14. On 14, there is a social emotional learning part of the Venn diagram that struck me, because if I understand you correctly, if an adult is involved with bullying, even if it's an adult to student, then it goes to HR?
Accurate.
Okay. So, and I'm going to ask this, not really of you, because it's really not in your area, but to Board Member Ryan, I would like to call for a look at our policies, to look at what our policy is on employee bullying, employee to employee, but also bullying from adult to student. And I'd like this to be applied, if possible, from the Board of Education all the way down to the 1 or 2 hour employee on the school site. A policy is something you start with, maybe administration, regulation, to set a tone in a district, and then to follow through with training. It's clear that we can't afford, or should we expect to have to do the intricate training with adults that we need to do with children, but we start with a policy. And with the policy, we were able to set the tone on how people should treat each other. And so, I don't know, Member Ryan, if you can speak to that, but it is something I would really like to see in the future.
So, Ms. Wharton, please feel free to talk about how that might be addressed in our existing school climate and bullying prevention policies. I do want to ask, which is very much aligned with what Member Cochran just said, you know, given the hate rhetoric and the national unfortunate statement of division that we continue to see from our president, and then how that trickles down at every level. Can you speak to the increased rates of bullying and how you're seeing some of that manifest on the playgrounds, in the classrooms, at the school site level?
Well, what I think, you know, is a lot of this, right, is starting out with what's going on in our country today. And then I think what happens is it is trickling down. More and more people are jumping on social media, and then that's a very difficult thing to chase, because somebody can say some hate speech on social media, right? Administrator can track that, and it may have had 45 likes, which means that, in my opinion, that's repetitive, right? So it's been repeated over time, and that's a really difficult thing when you don't know who the originator is. And so I think, in administrators' defense, and something that I'm trying to work with them on, is that social media is really one of the things that I think our schools have been chasing specifically for that. But there's a lot of resources. I know Student Support Health Services worked in conjunction with the Academic Office, SCL, to put out a toolkit. I know that we receive a lot of things from Teaching Tolerance, that whenever we receive it in our department, we also dispatch that out. They recently did an amazing article on speech, on hate speech. And I think, though, it's about trying to see if that can get disseminated, right, district-wide. Because sometimes, right, it just hits the key people that receive it on that email, and then it doesn't go further.
Thank you, Ms. Wharton. I know that the Southern Law and Poverty Center has talked about the Trump effect and how that has resulted in trauma and increased bullying on the playgrounds. And it's unfortunate that you and so many of our educators are forced to address that at a time when children are feeling less welcomed, more threatened, and without a necessarily school home. I do want to ask, just as a final question, I know that we are one of the few districts in the state that has a full-time bullying prevention specialist, and it seems to me to be an area where we've heard not only a desire that we have increased resources, but a dire need. Can you talk about how your position is currently funded?
So this position is currently, the salary is currently funded with no additional dollars. If a grant happens to come into our department and there's any kind of grant funding, it might go to it, but I have to tell you that's been pretty slim. I know Superintendent Aguilar, you recently received a pamphlet from Olveus. Olveus is considered one of the #1 evidence research-based, showing a increase in your positive school climate, a decrease in your bullying, an uptake on upstandard behavior, and yet, unfortunately, the price tag for that per school could be anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000, and we just don't have that resource. But it's not for lack of schools not asking for something additional, it's just that the resource to assist them. With that said, I will say, again, the community partner pocket is growing all the time. And there's a lot of free services that can come into our district. But capacity-wise, when you're looking at a district this size, right, they don't have the capacity to be able to do something that's systemic and across the board. So we need to look at things like PBIS, restorative practices, SEL, right, that can be systemic. But then with that, when people call and say, Jessica, I want a tier 2 that aligns to some of the behaviors that I'm seeing, then I lack that resource to be able to give them sometimes when they want something specific.
Thank you, Ms. Wharton. I think it's really troubling that we have to hope for additional grant funding to sustain the work of the bullying prevention. I think it's unfortunate that we have to hope for additional grant funding to be able to do restorative practices, trauma-informed practices, and things that we know are vital to a student's ability to show up to school each day and learn. And these are exactly the types of budget priorities that we need to safeguard, because I think we have been far too reliant upon grants to be able to continue your good work. And unfortunately, if anything, in a climate like this, the loss of a grant cannot result in us doing away with the work. We have to figure out a way to preserve it, since students desperately need your support. So I want to thank you for all of the hard work you're doing. I know that you do a lot with very little, and we are so lucky to have you in the district.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to item 9.3, student achievement presentation by Vincent Harris on the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium.
Take over, I don't know this stuff.
We'll figure it out. Just press next.
Good evening.
Anytime, Vincent.
All right. Good evening, First Vice President Wu, Board Member Superintendent Aguilar. My name is Vincent Harris. I lead our Continuous Improvement and Accountability Office, and I'm joined this evening with our Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Eilish Taylor, and our Director, Strategy and Improvement, Dr. Ed Eldridge, and Matt Turkey, Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction. Tonight, we'll spend time talking with you about our Smarter Balanced test results, which were recently released and made publicly available. This presentation will break into really 4 themes. One will be the overview, which will include a couple of sub-bullets around some emerging bright spots, but also speak very clearly to some of the longstanding concerns that we have in the district and speak to some of the current district work underway. We'll have Dr. Eldridge take you through the data in terms of briefly sharing with you the various gaps within our system that we're looking to remediate and to close. And then finally, we'll have Dr. Taylor and Mr. Turkey will give you an overview of what we're doing about the data. We know that's critically important in terms of changing conditions in the present. And so speaking to our system arching themes, here you see again kind of the notion of, we know that every system is perfectly designed to get the results that it gets, and so we wrestle with that statement as staff because the results here we know are unacceptable to the board and to the community. But we also recognize that as we look at the core value and then think about the guiding principle, that we have to disrupt the current patterns in the data that we see. And ultimately, if we really want students to have the widest array of options, that really does mean being grade level ready and demonstrating mastery at grade level. And so as we think about the Smarter Balance exam, it really breaks into 4 layers of performance under 2 broad subject areas, English language arts and mathematics, and the testing grades are there in front of you, 3 through 8 and grade 11. And there you can see, as we think about the opportunity for our students and the real equity conditions that we can rate, we know that really comes down to our students scoring met or standard exceeded. We know that as a litmus test for success for our students, we know that principally this exam, as we think about opportunities and life chances, it's really meeting met or exceeded overall. And so we did, we've been data mining, we've been looking at the data, and there are some emerging bright spots. You can see that, there are 3 grade levels within ELA where we saw growth, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and that'll actually be a reoccurring theme in math as well, along with 6th grade. You can see with some of our student groups, particularly Asian student groups, we saw some growth, and then with students who receive special education services. And as we look at the math portion of the exam, we also saw that same pattern as I mentioned in terms of the same grades, but also now including the 6th grade as well in math. Pretty much the same student subgroups to a large extent. And then in this context, students with disabilities and students who are socially economically disadvantaged, showing some growth in math. But really the importance of this presentation is about our areas of concern. And so as we think about our student populations, particularly those student populations that we know have been called out at risk, whether it be through LCFF or other means, we see that as we think about achievement for those students, we really see this undisturbing cap for English learner and foster youth, students with disability, and homeless students. And so we recognize that their current level of met or exceeded is wholly unacceptable. And as we think about the gaps for our students, we see very discouraging results, particularly as we think about our African-American students, both in ELA and math, where we see a 40-point, on average, percentage point difference. And so as we think about the work of the African-American Achievement Task Force, this is a real opportunity for us to disrupt that. And we're so fortunate to have that task force in place to help us think about ways to do that. With that, I will turn it over to Dr. Eldridge to take you through the actual data slides that are in the presentation.
So good evening, Board of Education, Superintendent Aguilar. So these next few slides are a way to provide detail behind, the narrative that Mr. Harris just went over. The first slide is a detail that shows our performance in our district compared to neighboring districts as well as districts that we collaborate with in addition to the County of Sacramento and the State of California. This is our English language arts results, and this shows us at 40% in 2017-18. This is a similar slide that shows the same information for our comparison districts as well as our county and our state, and you'll see that Sacramento City is highlighted with a percent of students who are meeting or exceeding standards at 32%. In this particular slide, we looked at our performance by our student groups in terms of our federally reported ethnic and racial groups. And so you'll see that we highlighted for you the student groups that grew from 2016-17 to 17-18 in the English language arts. And you also see the same information in our math for the student groups as well. In this next slide, we also broke out the information for our specific Asian races. And you'll see we highlighted for you where we experienced one-year gains in our percentage of students meeting and exceeding standards in English language arts, and the same information in mathematics as well. And finally, we've provided the same information for you for our student programs. You'll see here, just kind of slow down a little bit to show you that in our special education, for example, you'll see that we did experience a 1-point gain in English language arts. There, as well as we experienced gains in our socioeconomic disadvantage and our special education for mathematics as well. At this point in time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Turkey for lessons learned.
Good evening. So our first bullet point here, continue ongoing analysis of student group performance in order to identify opportunities to close opportunity gaps. This is really talking about and connects with the work which we're doing with schools around grade level readiness and some essential components of that, which are the needs assessment and problem statements which schools are coming up with, so they know really what they need to focus their work on. The second bullet point, ongoing data collection and analysis from common formative assessments, are critical for monitoring student progress and for providing responsive interventions to students, is also connected to our work which we're doing with schools, in that when schools try something out, let's say they know what their problem statement is, they know where their students of most need are, and then they think of some change ideas, and then the second bullet here is really measuring the effect of those change ideas so they can see if a change is actually an improvement. The third and fourth bullet points really go together. The shifts in instruction required by the Common Core in ELA and math are a major cultural change and require time, continuous learning, and collaboration. And therefore, we know that this requires commitment from all layers in the system. And we need to have a team approach which utilizes each of the four tenets, curriculum and instruction, professional learning, supervision and evaluation, and logistics and operations. And basically what this means at the school site level is we are aligning the work of principals, IASs, teachers, training specialists, curriculum specialists, so that we can provide that job-embedded ongoing professional learning to those teams of teachers as they're focusing in on their problem statement and how to solve it. Thank you all. Now hand on to Dr. Taylor.
Good evening, board members and Superintendent Aguilar. So as we continue to just sit through, comb through, and analyze these data, some of our next steps include a continuation of some of the professional learning that we started this year around our ELA, our new ELA and ELD adoption. We're very excited to have these new instructional materials across the system because we believe that that will contribute to more consistency within the English language arts in particular. We will also continue our job-embedded professional learning, which is primarily provided by our training specialists who go out to sites and really work arm in arm with teachers in their Common Core, ELA, and math standards implementation. And then a few years ago, we had developed some curriculum maps for English language arts and mathematics, and these are continuously under revision, but with our new adoption of ELA instructional materials, definitely we'll go back into those maps and revise them with an eye on just increasingly within instructional materials is great technology resources, and so wanting to highlight for our teachers the use of technology-based resources in implementation of the standards. And then always working to expand the district's, our work with our parents and stakeholders, so working closely with our parent advisory groups to provide workshops and professional learning in these two key content areas of mathematics and English language arts. And then finally, you've heard us speak in previous sessions, particularly related to the special education review around a multi-tiered system of supports. And then most recently tonight, where you heard about the early identification and intervention system, the EIIS system, just developing ways for us to quickly and early identify students who are in need of supports, but then moving further to identify what are the key interventions that our students will be provided, and then what's the impact of those interventions by the data analysis that, that Matt Turkey alluded to earlier. So with that, we'll take public comment and questions from the board.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Mr. Barrios, do we have any public comment?
No public comments.
Do we have any board member comments? Looks like we don't have any board member comments at this time. Thank you so much for the update. We appreciate it. Moving on to item 10.0, the consent agenda. Before asking for a motion to approve the consent agenda, I would like to move to delete item 10.1G as the New Tech Site Council is being reconstituted in order to meet quorum requirements to recommend its SIPSA plan to the board. Do I have a second to that motion?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So I will take a motion to adopt the remaining agenda. So, second? Student preferential vote?
I vote yes on all open session items.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 11.0, communications. 11.1, organizational reports. SCTA, not present. SCIU. TCS. Teamsters. UPE. 11.2, District Parent Advisory Committees. The CAC Committee, the District English Learner Advisory Committee. Okay.
I don't think anyone's here, Member Ryan, but I am happy to say that our multicultural department did develop an informational brochure for this committee, which is now available on sites and is made in the hopes to recruit a lot more members. Thank you.
Oh, yes, of course. Thank you, Board Member Cochran. District English Learner Advisory Committee. Local Control Accountability Plan Parent Advisory Committee. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you very much. I'm Catherine Horiyuchi. I am here representing the LCAP PAC. And I have a few points for you that kind of encapsulates what we've been doing on the Parent Advisory Committee. At our last meeting, we had the county LCAP director discuss the review and comment role of the LCAP PAC, which is important because we have quite a few new members on the committee this year. And the essence of that was that our comments or suggestions or recommendations to the superintendent and the board, not solely an end of the year list of recommendations, but a part of an ongoing dialogue between the parents of the district and the board. We talked about federal funds in the LCAP and how we're trying to put all the federal funds, not just Title I funds, in the LCAP so that the LCAP can better serve as a primary strategic document for the district and something that all the people in the community can look to know how we're meeting the needs of the district. There was quite a bit of discussion on the local indicators reporting in the committee. We saw the same presentation you saw at the 10/16 board meeting. And for the most part, the concerns were around the idea of the met, not met binary depiction of the local indicators that showed that we had met all the local indicators, which might be a standard that is so low that it might result in complacency about some of those things rather than a closer look at why those indicators are what those indicators actually show us. For instance, the state standard implementation indicator had a survey that was met through an opt-in, voluntary, and anonymous survey of school administrators. Since only the administrators that they sent, they invited, submitted that, there could be a lot of things we would overlook. We don't know if that sample was representative or not. And similarly, the new indicator for course access enrollment is met, but as you heard earlier, not all communities of students seem to be participating in some of those courses, and we wonder about their access to those courses. And that's the summary of what we've been working on.
Thank you so much. We deeply appreciate your service.
Glad to be here.
Item 11.3, the superintendent's report.
Thank you, President Ryan. I'd like to first start by thanking our facilities team for all of the work that they've put in for almost 2 years to finally reach a point, as you've been able to see throughout the board meeting, to upgrade equipment in the board room. And certainly does look different, and I think in terms of accessibility, much easier to see the presentations and see slides that have been presented by our staff, and I and the board heard a lot of complaints around that. This was equipment that we had that was almost 20 years old. We still have some wrinkles to sort out, and some of that was evident this evening. But in addition, we received information from Metro Cable that the video quality just was not appropriate anymore. And fortunately, we did have some capital improvement funds that we were able to use to make the upgrades. So thank you to our facilities team under Kathy Allen. I'd also like to take a moment and thank everyone involved in the many fall festivals that took place over the course of the past week or so. I attended one at Caleb Greenwood and was able to get a lot of pictures over the past few days, including yesterday, of beautiful costumes throughout the entire district of students as well as our staff. And just lots of smiles across the entire district. And so thank you for creating a safe, positive, and nurturing school environment to everyone. And it's not just at fall festivals that I saw a lot of smiling faces from young and older, but I also have seen it out in our flag football games, which we are now at the midway point, and there's a lot of excitement, and I know that there's an app now that you can download to stay on top of scores, but I did want to highlight a few of these. In the Lions League, Hollywood Park Elementary is in first place with a perfect 5-0 record, followed by Crocker Riverside, Oak Ridge, and Sutterville. In the Cougars League, Didion is in first place also with a perfect 5-0 record, followed by John Sloat, Matsuyama, and Bidwell. In the Warriors League, number 1, Ethel I. Baker is in first place with a perfect 5-0 record, followed closely by Elder Creek, which is 4-1. In Warriors League number 2, Caleb Greenwood and Phoebe Hurst are both 5-0 and tied for first place. These two teams are scheduled to play each other next Wednesday, November 7th at Kit Carson in a match where one of them will lose the O and have one loss. In the Wolverines League, Golden Empire is also 5-0 and in first place, followed by Marshall and Sequoia. And in the Titans League, Parkway Elementary is 4-0-1 with a tie, and just slightly ahead of Rosa Parks, which is 4-1 and inching up on first place. I'm excited that the championship game will eventually be played at Kennedy, I understand, under lights, with an announcer announcing the entire football game as well. So that's going to be very exciting. Thank you to all of our staff, our coaches, our players, our City of Sacramento partners for making this flag football season a great success. Our latest count has showed that 1,200 elementary students are now playing in the league and all proudly wearing their jerseys during the school day, as well as during the matches, of course. I'd also like to thank the two seniors that came to speak at our board meeting. We don't often get to hear from our students, and their testimonies were very inspiring and heartfelt as you heard them. And I know that they're very busy as seniors, of course, going into the last few weeks of the first semester. Creating a college-going culture and or pursuing career technical education. And I noticed that one of our students is probably in our public service or law academy at McClatchy wearing her cadet uniform. And certainly while I'm pleased to hear from Mr. Harris about the progress that we are making in terms of graduation and A to G requirements, I also think that it's important that we pay attention to the last presentation that was delivered by Mr. Harris and Dr. Taylor and our other staff, because we certainly have a long ways to go. The results in our SBAC scores are not where we need them to be for our students. And certainly, I think I can speak for the board that those are the kind of data points that keep us up at night, because we do have significant achievement gaps across many student groups. And I say this because we will have to continue working and being very intentional in changing those outcomes and upending the system that is producing those outcomes. And I do want to thank, in large part, our African American Task Force members who have been here every single Tuesday evening and are actively working to present recommendations to our board in the next few weeks. I also do want to close by reiterating that we must continue working together and must continue to collaborate in order to overcome the immediate budget challenges that we face, and that we will have to continue to work toward before our December 14th first interim deadline. And I do believe wholeheartedly that we will get through this budget challenge and move on to the important work which is keeping students at the core and at the center of what we do every single day in Sac City Unified.
Thank you, Superintendent Aguilar. Item 11.4, the President's Report. I'm hoping my voice will hold out. I have, I think, a more serious tone to the update that I want to share tonight. Clearly, we have been, as a nation, grappling with tremendous acts of hate and the implications on our children who are listening and watching as we grieve. I'm speaking specifically to the tragedy at Tree of Life Synagogue and the ripples that have been felt across the country and by our children as we know that hate rhetoric, that racism, that anti-Semitism and misogyny is reaching a level that is unlike anything that many of us have seen, at least in our lifetimes. I would also like to just say, as we mourn the tragedy of Tree of Life, we also are, in very short order, having to deal with rhetoric at a national level about ending birthright citizenship in direct violation of the 14th Amendment. I think everyone here knows that we were a proud leader as a safe haven school district. And being a safe haven school district meant that our schools were welcome to all, irrespective of their race, their religious identification, their gender identification. And we have to, as a school district, recognizing such, note that even if the statements by our president are only meant as a voter intimidation tactic or as a statement of division meant to unify a small few, that those words are felt by our children and our families, and we have to, as a school district, do everything we can to recommit to being a safe haven and to sharing the vital role that each and every one of our children play, whether they're born here or not. And so, again, I hope that we as board members, as a school district, recognize that these are unprecedented times that require unprecedented action, and that our children are grieving and feeling the words and action of our leadership at all levels. Item 11.5, Student Board Member Report. Board Member Halbo.
So just a couple quick student group updates. The Men's and Women's Leadership Academy is producing a podcast called the We Dream Podcast. It's available on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, and YouTube. So feel free to give it a listen and stay posted for upcoming episodes. The Source Media Agency is still looking to partner with ASBs and student governments at SCUSD high schools for the Be Here campaign, which is designed to decrease chronic absenteeism. If you're in ASB at your high school, feel free to email Cecilia at ceciliakolkiko@gmail.com. And the Student Advisory Council took yesterday off for Halloween, but the previous Wednesday we met and continued the process of coding responses to the surveys so we can find out what issues students in our district are facing in order to ensure that this year's initiative is one that will impact all students. The obvious imbalance of student voice, of which student voices are heard and represented in our district, is something I've become aware of recently. Student Advisory Council doesn't have representatives from certain high schools because we didn't receive applications from them. This position has been held by a West Campus or McClatchy student for almost the past 10 years. Committees either don't have students on them or they have one of the 10 students who are involved in the district. This needs to change, and I'm really looking to start working at school sites that are not as well represented in the student voice in our district. I received, I think, about 2 comments about looking into electronic textbooks for school sites, and so I just thought I would put that out there. I know very little about it, but it's something that is clearly something that students are looking into.
Thank you so much, Board Member Halbo. 11.6, sharing by board members. Do we have any board member updates at this time? Board Member Cochran, followed by Board Member Minnick.
So I'd like to thank student member Halbo, and I'd like to put a suggestion that, Kit Carson is now fully built out through the 12th grade. It might be the perfect campus to try to do recruitment on, and I'd be happy to help you with that if you'd like. I think it was about a week ago on a Wednesday in golden October light that I went out with Superintendent Aguilar to Kit Carson to see approximately 5 teams play flag football. And I have to report that it was a very warm and wonderful experience, and I know that these games mean so much to these children. These memories are going to stay with them throughout their lives, and I felt just very happy to be there. And this is definitely a program that we have to really work out the funding for so it continues. So I have some very happy news about Hiram Johnson. The field is actually finished, and as I drove down 65th Street today coming to the board meeting, I saw the girls' soccer team practicing. However, it's not officially open, and I'd like to let everyone know that the ribbon cutting will be on November 9th, which is a Friday coming up, and the first game, which I believe is a soccer game, will be on the 16th, which is the next Friday. And if it's not a soccer game and it's actually a football game, please, I'll stand corrected. But I'm just so happy. It's so beautiful, so colorful, so well done. And those girls look so happy running like little mad people around the field. So thank you very much, Sac City. Do you know what time I don't know yet, but the Principal Kirkland will make sure to send out an announcement.
Thank you, Board Member Cochran. Board Member Minnick.
I just wanted to share that last Friday, I had a pretty awesome afternoon where I went to 4 harvest festivals, fall festivals, Halloween carnivals at 4 different schools. I started at West Campus at noon. I got to see Member Halbo, where she and all her colleagues were looking fly in their costumes, and I got to see a hypnotist show. Then I went to Camellia Basic, where they had a dunk tank, and I got to see some 6th graders get drenched. That was pretty cool. Elder Creek, where it was so busy there that I had to park like 5 blocks away, and I got to walk 5 blocks with a mom and her 5 kids and talk about her experience as a new family to our district after battling homelessness. So I got to hear some of those stories, and then as it got dark, I wrapped up at Bonheim Elementary School, where they were going well into the evening. The reason why I mention this is it's not newsworthy or anything, but as we've been spending all this time, talking about budgets and all kinds of other things that seem so far removed from the kids, it was a nice reminder to think about why we're here. And to spend some positive time with a lot of young people and see all the cool things that were going on. And I, went home that night just feeling like, okay, this, as frustrating as, some of our, recent conversations have been, or, painful as they've been, as we talk about the budget and other things, I got kind of motivated again, and I felt excited to spend that time at the site. So I just wanted to share that with you guys.
Thank you so much, Vice President Minnick. Vice President Wu.
Thank you, President Ryan. I just want to say that I have returned from the Council of great city schools, where I participated in the executive committee as well as board of directors meeting, and I got the opportunity to listen to a panel of students from around the country, juniors and seniors, including a student from Broward County, where the shooting was last year, and it was and they were talking about the elections and the importance of voting. And while they were rather hesitant at first about the state of our country. I think that in the future, our country will be in good hands with these as our future leaders. I just wanted to share that in terms of federal funding, we won't be next March having to pound on the doors of Congress because federal dollars have already been budgeted for education. They got snuck in somehow with the military budget, but it's there and it's been signed and approved, so I'm thankful for that. We'll get a skosh more money across the nation for education.
Thank you so much, Vice President Wu. Board Member Pritchett.
Thank you, President Ryan. I as well attended several of the fall festivals and the community. In fact, I forgot all about Sequoia Elementary until I walked outside and I could hear it from my house. So I thought, I better walk over there. And it was awesome. So I was glad that I could hear it. The superintendent and I had fun at the Rosemont homecoming parade that they have every year, where they involve the community of all of the elementary schools, and we were able to ride in the horse-drawn carriage in their parade and cheer on with the kids, which was a lot of fun. And then finally, in my 16-hour whirlwind trip to Dallas, Texas, 2 weeks ago? Yeah, 2 weeks ago. I traveled with TUMUA for the parent-teacher home visit executive board meeting. And I was where I was elected again to serve on their executive board. And so I just wanted to thank the district and our board for the opportunity to be able to support our teachers and our families. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Pritchett. Item 11.7, Board Member Committee Reports. Do we have any committee reports this evening? Yes. Looks like Board Member Pritchett also has a committee report.
The Facilities Committee will be meeting on November 8th at noon at the Permits Office, Facilities Office, whatever it's called.
Board Member Vang, would you like to announce the next meeting for the Policy and Governance?
Yeah, the next meeting will be on Friday, November 9th at 4 p.m.
Thank you so much, Board Member Vang and Board Member Pritchett. Item 12.0, Business and Financial Information Reports. 12.1, Business and Financial Information. Receive the Enrollment and Attendance Report for the month. Item 12.2, Head Start Early Start Reports. Item 13.0, Future Board Meeting Dates and Locations. Our next... Oh.
There's one public comment from Cecile Nunley on 12.0.
We don't usually have public comment on reports that we're receiving.
I decided to change the whole thing up, see? That
Keeping us
is
on our toes.
Enrollment and Attendance Report for month 1. Which ended September 21st, so it's coming to the board now. The big question that I have on this one, enrollment, in light of your budget and the budget issues, enrollment is going to be critical. Your CalPads should have come up. One of the questions that I would have on that particular report is, how does it compare to what was budgeted? What was the estimate that was budgeted, and what are you showing as far as your actuals and any difference there? I would highly recommend that the board consider having some type of presentation just on that type of information, because it's so critical. And since you're going to have to look at so many details with regards to your budget, that's just one. I wouldn't worry at this point as far as looking at dollars attached to it, but just knowing how many students and where you're going on that and looking at trends. I would just highly recommend the board consider that.
Thank you, Cecile. Excellent suggestion. Item 13.0, Future Board Meetings and Dates and Locations. Our next board meeting will be held on November 15th at 4:30 p.m. at the Cerna Center. With that, item 14.0, I will entertain a motion for adjournment. Second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. The board meeting is adjourned.